You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell. Sponsored by Absolute Mortgage, a division of Pinnacle Capital Mortgage Corporation. Now, in the studio, local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Well, welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here at 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, March 12th show. I provide you the news on everything money, fresh information on market trends and conditions in our local economy, what's happening right now today. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast. To talk with the guests that I have in studio, or if you want to chat a little bit with myself, call 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. Right now in studio, I'm going to have a conversation with Kim Fraser with John L. Scott Bellevue. Not a first time. I've had you in before, Kim, and it's exciting to have a conversation with you again. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And a little background about Kim. John L. Scott, again, in Bellevue. Kim has been a real estate agent with John L. Scott for 14 years and has been recognized in the top 1% of all John L. Scott agents for 2015. This was Kim's fifth time earning the top 1% designation. Kim has sold over 800 homes in her career and sold 79 homes just last year in 2015. Pretty gosh darn impressive, Kim.
Thank you.
I only bring the best in here because that's really, again, what the show is about, is providing expert advice on every area regarding financing. And right now, more than ever, we do need expert advice in this market, whether you're a seller and you want to get top dollar in this market, or you're a buyer just trying to get into the market. So that's what we're going to be talking about, buying and selling in today's market with the limited inventory. So Kim, how do you prepare your buyers to compete in today's market with multiple offers?
I think first and foremost is having great financing, which is where you come into play. I think to compete, a lot of cash buyers out there still in the marketplace. Yeah. So for those that are needing financing, I think all the more reason for them to have their financing, even fully approved, have their loan go through final loan approval.
Yes.
So then all we have to do is insert the appraisal. Then, that probably shortens it, what do you think, by about half their qualification period. You can take that from maybe a 30 or 45 day closing to a 14 to 21 day.
Depends,
depending on their other circumstances. But I think it's important to kind of try to shorten up that timeline, make sure they're rock solid. No one's even going to look at an offer unless you're pre-qualified with a strong pre-approval letter.
Yeah, makes total sense. And what about coaching for your sellers when these multiple offers are coming in? Because I'd imagine that could be kind of stressful on a seller to make sure that they're getting the best offer and one that's going to actually make it all the way through closing.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's important to, to hire a professional to do the negotiations for you, because we know what we're looking for, strength of borrower. I mean, occasionally one will surprise you and kind of fall apart that you weren't anticipating. But there's so many different equations that come into play. Some of it's, price. Obviously, all sellers want to get maximum price for their property, but it's not always just about price.
Yes.
There's a combination between price and strength of borrower, down payment. Are we going to run into appraisal issues in these multiple offer situations when the prices are going anywhere from 5 to 25% above list price?
Yes.
We also have to take that into consideration as well when we're deciding which offer to take.
So going back to the buyers, any other strategies in positioning them? You talked about an appraisal because, knock on wood, there's not a lot of them coming in with the value low, but there are ones that are coming in. And it's a first in my career that, you're just having this issue that pops up. What are you doing to position your buyers with the appraisal? I mean, are there things that you're doing?
Well, there's some aspects in the financing addendum where if my client has money in addition to their down payment and they're not worried about paying a little bit more than appraised price, which happens occasionally, and they have a little bit more money that they can bring to the table to bring that dollar amount down in addition to their down payment, that's a conversation that we have in case it does not appraise, which occasionally does happen.
Yep.
If they're in a position where they can do that, then we can waive the appraisal. So that appraisal is no longer part of that financing contingency, which will also put them in a position of strength, because when you're concerned about that appraisal and the borrower doesn't have a large down payment, say maybe they're going 20% above list price, but they're only putting 10% down. Your risk of, and if it's priced competitively, your risk of the house not appraising is pretty significant. So those are some of the things you kind of, by waiving appraisal, you can do that, but it is risky.
Yes.
You would be putting your earnest money on the line at that point if for some reason you weren't able to bring in that difference in the payment and you had to walk away.
Exactly. And I'm part of the Women's Council of Realtors, a lender, not a realtor, but I'm part of the group. And they have some amazing people that come in and speak. And one of them was Alan Pope. I'm sure you've heard of him. Very highly respected appraiser. And I've been doing mortgages for 20 years. I do a lot of business, and you think you know everything. But one thing that he said that was really shocking that I didn't realize is when you have the lower down payment, we're talking like a 5% conventional down payment borrower, and they're paying top price. So they're out of 20 offers, and they're making their price the highest. The appraiser actually is having an issue appraising it for that because of the fact that they're feeling they're forced to pay higher to compete, being that they're the 5% down. So it was crazy to hear that. But anyways, we could have a whole conversation on just the appraisals. What can a buyer expect to pay above list price? I mean, you gave a little
I think in the South End, I think in South King County, the percentages are lower. You know, the Auburn, Federal Kent area, you might be looking at 5% above list price typically. Okay. The Seattle market, and my co-guest here, Carrie, from the West Seattle General Scott office, Carrie can attest to that a little bit. In the Seattle market,
that's crazy.
Is probably 10 to 25%. Yeah. I just competed with one. It was a 492 list price. We offered 605 on the escalation. It went for 680 for a 900 square foot house in Ballard.
Yeah, crazy.
And my client didn't get it. So it went about 30% above list price. Typically in the Bellevue market, 10 to 15% usually gets it done.
Yeah, unbelievable. So how do you qualify the buyers to give your seller the best chance to get the offer to the closing table?
By vetting the borrower, number one, by talking to their lender. I actually, if it's between a few, you definitely want to have that conversation with the different lenders.
Yes.
I did accept an offer recently. We closed in December in Bellevue, and it was about 15% above list price.
Okay.
We took the highest offer, but it had the lowest down payment. Payment.
Yep.
So they were only putting 10% down, but they were like $15,000 higher than the next competing offer.
Okay.
So what I did is I called the lender, kind of vetted them out. They did have other resources they could bring to the table.
Yep.
We knew there was a little bit risk involved, but they kind of reassured us, waived their appraisal, that we could make that happen. But some of the other competing offers were 40% down. So it's really a balancing act of trying to figure out what's in the client's best interest. It's not always just price or always just significant down payment or cash. Sometimes you kind of have to just figure it out as you go.
Exactly. So what about preparing your sellers to maximize? Because a seller knows you're going to sell your house, but really, and I say this all the time on the show, in this market right now, it's not about being able to sell your price. It's about how much you're going to take net from that home. You want to maximize it. So how are you coaching your sellers and maximizing to get those multiple offers?
Well, I think you have to be really cautious not to overprice the property to begin with. I met with a client last night, and even when he was talking, trying to go about $25,000, about 3% over our projected list price. And I was really encouraging him, trying to stay right underneath that threshold, because it was going to garner more offers than trying to stretch it. I would rather have the market dictate what the price is going to be by having the seller trying to get a little too greedy on the front end, overpricing it, therefore bringing less offers in to begin with. Yeah. Another thing I was counseling them about last night is we typically list houses like on a Wednesday or Thursday and do offer review periods on that Monday or Tuesday. They were wanting to extend it almost to 2 weekends. And I said that wasn't a good idea, because people don't want to sit out there waiting for that long, number one. Yeah. And you're going to get the strongest offers that first weekend anyway. So do you really need 20, above list price offers, or do you need 40 above list price offers? Or it could bite you in the tush and you don't get any because nobody wants to sit out there and wait for 14 days.
And they're wondering why that property's been waiting for out there for 14 days, right?
People get anxious, and you make them angry. Yeah. And they'll just pass. They won't even make an offer on your house. They're like, I'm not waiting for 12 or 14 days.
Exactly.
So they'll just pass on your house altogether.
So if you're listening to the show right now, the biggest advice that I can give you in talking with Kim, and Carrie is going to be my next guest with John Scott as well, is you've got to listen to your expert that you're hiring. You got to make sure that you hire the best, and many resources to know that. I've got 2 of them right here in studio, and you've got to listen to what they're saying, because they're doing this all day, multiple offers, and dealing with all of this. So listening to the advice that they're giving you to get your offer accepted as a buyer and getting the maximum dollar for you as sellers. So in risk of, let's go back to the buyer side, risk in being competitive in this multiple offer and waiving finance contingency, waiving inspection contingency, doing pre-inspection. What tips and advice do you have there, Kim?
Oh, gosh. I think,
I know that's a loaded question.
yeah, it's like, where do you start? I think, especially for the older houses, pre-inspections are key. If it's a newer house, I think, it's a risk you take. I think most newer houses are pretty solid. I mean, there's always some things that can surprise you. So if you're kind of a little bit of a nervous Nelly, I definitely would encourage you to do a pre-inspection prior to that. I think about maybe half my clients do a pre-inspection, half just waive it. So it just depends on the property. In regards to financing, my clients are always asking me, how much should I offer? I'm like, I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because I am the right person, but at the same time, my threshold is probably much higher than their threshold is, because I do this all day long. And so I just tell them to get to the point where it makes you sick to your stomach. And if at that point, it makes you sick to your stomach. And if at some point you don't get it, you're okay with it. That's where you have to just stretch yourself to the point where you wouldn't even be comfortable going another dollar over. Get to that point, and then that's your outer threshold. Because otherwise, anything I say, if you lose it for $5,000 less than that, how would you feel? I'd be sick. So, go to each person's going to have a different threshold, different comfort level. So I just say, you have to decide. I can't make that decision for you.
And understanding that $5,000 a month is $25 a month in the payment. And it's key for them to understand. It's surprising to see how many people don't have the basic of the numbers. They're not, understanding that, which is key. Dennis talked about, knowing where our money is and knowing the numbers and what you're spending makes a huge difference. So the seller looking at deciding on what offer to accept, you've said earlier about it's not always about price. So again, how are you counseling around that?
Well, we kind of separate them out. I think basically we kind of set out several different piles typically. You'll have very minimal down payment. We'll kind of go into 3.5% to 5%. It's kind of one section. If a house has been on the market, you've missed that first week of activity and you're just taking offers as they go, that kind of thing. In different markets, it's not as competitive as it is in Seattle and the East Side. So I kind of feel like we're talking to those two markets right now. But the other outer line areas around Puget Sound, it's typically not as competitive as that. So the 3.5% and 5% down payments are more common than what we see in the East Side and in Seattle, I think. But we'll kind of base, kind of tiering the pricing and then also tiering the down payment within the pricing, and then taking a look at the strength of the borrower, timelines for closing. Are they asking for an inspection? Are they asking for closing costs? Anything they're throwing in, appliances, furniture, kids, just kidding. They just we'll throw things in there.
Well,
so you kind of vet all of that. They can have a couple of mine. So that's so we kind of separate them out according to, price, and then from price, down payment and things like that.
Makes sense. So right now, if a buyer's listening, lack of inventory, amazing interest rates, rents are in ridiculous, and they're not going to stop. Is it a good time for a buyer to buy right now?
It's a great time to buy. I think you just have to be informed, have a great agent working on your behalf, be prepared to do an escalation clause. And then I think you just have to jump in with both feet.
Got it. And seller, good time for a seller to put their house on the market.
Excellent time. There's no inventory. I read a thing in the MLS yesterday that it's just buyers are getting frustrated because there's just no inventory out there.
Well, Kim, any other tips that you would like to share if there's a buyer or a seller listening right now? What can you share with them to really just set themselves aside from all of the craziness that's going on out there? How can you just kind of calm things down for them a little bit?
Well, as a buyer, I think I would be very informed, have a great lender like yourself to really be able to make educated decisions, whether it's the right time for them to buy or not due to their own financial circumstances. Rents will continue to go up in record rates. When I bought my first house 25 years ago, rates were 10%, and now they're under 4%. So big difference. So it's a great time to buy still. For sellers, if you're ever going to make that move up, it's a great time. You're going to get the strongest offers for your house, and still it's a good time to go take advantage of it on the other side with the lower interest rates.
And if a seller, what's the biggest mistake the seller could make right now?
Gosh, waiting too long or not having their house when they do get ready to list is not having it show ready. I think it's important that your house presents well, decluttered, staged, great curb appeal, things like that. No, not overshooting the market. Sometimes we get greedy. Let the market drive your price up. Don't be the one driving up your price.
Makes total sense. Thank you so much, Kim, for joining me back in studio.
Thank you for having me.
Love having you here.
Great to see you.
Great to see you. Coming up next in the Money Hour, why use a seasoned real estate broker in today's real estate market? Well, I've got Carrie Scott with John L. Scott, West Seattle office, right here in 1150 AM, KKNW.